I've got those like,
Hi everyone, this is Zach Fine at the Masculinity. Uh, what's my channel called? The Masculinity Therapist. That's right. And I've got a good friend Colin Curbishley with me today. Colin is well, I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute, but I just to say I met Colin quite a few years ago in a mentoring charity. It was a kind of a men's circle thing with the band of brothers, and we've been in touch ever since. And we worked on an idea a few years ago that we're going to talk about today called Over 60, Finding Pathways to Fulfillment in Later Life. But we did, along with a couple of other men, including my father, we researched it and talked about it for a while, but we never really launched it. So I think today is a little bit to do with me and Colin just reacquainting ourselves with the ideas and maybe seeing if we get any interest in them. And we're quite maybe interested in picking it up again and maybe running a group or talking to men in this part of life who are looking for guidance and insight. Um, yeah, Colin, how how are you doing?
yeah, good. Thanks. I've had a rare, clear afternoon, so I've just been, yeah, going over some of those notes and revisiting some of the research that we've done
Yeah.
for that project. So yeah, it's been useful. Yeah, and as someone who's a month away from being eligible for his UK state pension, I'm
What's
kind of,
that? 75 or something these
ah,
days?
thanks, mate. Yeah. Now you see, I was born in 1960, so I'm eligible at the age of 66.
Nice.
Yeah, and so that's me. I'm going to be what used to be called an OAP, an old age pensioner. I don't think that sort of term's out there anymore, but I do. Yeah, it's quite a weird feeling that, oh God, that's me.
It
So
is
yeah,
you,
yeah,
but you're quite young. I feel you seem young to me, but you've had an unconventional life in a way. You've spent a chunk of time in in a spiritual life, completely out of the materium, so to speak. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What was going on when you
yeah.
did that?
Hence some of the stuff in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was from the age of 33 to 43 that I lived in what what was originally called a Tibetan Buddhist community and then became a monastery um, as it was built up with a yeah I think originally the biggest sort of temple in Europe, Tibetan Buddhist temple in Europe, and big stupa and all the kit and caboodle that goes with it, and
Where is it?
in it's just outside Lockerbie in a place called Eskdale Muir. It's called Sami Ling.
Mm.
Yeah, it's well known in Tibetan Buddhist circles, but yeah, it's quite so. It's and it's also on the tourist route through Scotland, so it would get thousands of visitors a year, which was quite a strange thing. What being because I was a monk there, so I took ordination for just over 8 years, I think 8.5 years, and
Mm.
10 years. Yeah, so yeah, definitely unconventional, and I think it came out of me questioning what's it all about. And so
What are we doing?
well, exactly. I always remember sort of I have the not very good at impressions. Michael Caine. There was a film called that he was in, and it was "What's it all about, Alfie?" And that was the line in it. And I always remember that thing. What is it all about? And I had friends died, uh, two, three people, two in there before they reached 20, and another one, a really close friend who was died in his 20s, mid 20s. And I remember going around just asking people, what's it all about? Was really, what's going on? Why do people die like? So nobody had any answers. Nobody.
Mm.
So I kind of went back to my burying myself in drink and the rest of it until one day I basically I lost a property. I'd had a business and I had a house in a very smart area of South Manchester, which is where now all the footballers live. Uh, and
God, you'd be really rich now if you hadn't
well,
lost.
yeah, that was it. Yeah. But I ended up. It was the days of Maggie and the interest rate hikes from people at the end of the 70s had now where are we? Not the end of the 80s.
Went to 13% or something.
13%, 13,
Yeah.
14% or something. And wow, that was, and as well as all because I was in the creative sector and publishing and advertising and all that just completely fell flat. And that was the end of it. So I ended up giving the keys back, if you like, and scooting off in what was an old ambulance that was converted into a motorhome and a new life. I didn't know I was going to the monastery. I was just taking two friends there, and I was going to drop them off. And then
10
when
years later.
yeah, that was it. Yeah, I was heading off up to Aberdeen or something. 10 years later. So yeah, there was something magical about turning up there and sitting in front of the Lama there, who was the abbot of the monastery,
Mm.
in his little office room, and yeah, just being looked into and
Penetrated.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just, I knew at that time that was it. That's why I was there. I wasn't there. Yeah, I was there to start another kind of journey, not the one I thought I was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it briefly, but yeah.
That's a really good segue into the theme today, which is um well, my supervisor, in my work as a therapist, my supervisor often reminds me of this graph, which is horizontal is personal development, and then vertical is spiritual development. And in our culture, lots of us just go along this, we just kind of focus on this one. So we get, we go to school, we get a driving license, we get a job, we get a girlfriend or a partner, we get a house, we get holidays, and then, better house, better car, and maybe have kids. We get all the white goods, all the stuff, and then maybe one day we wake up and it might be as we're getting close to death, even we sort of go, it's not really it. There's something missing, which is this bit, which is what you were doing at the monastery, which is you can do it without much material stuff. You can lean into your relationship with the mystery and the divine and all the different words that we have from all the different traditions. And there's no one way to do it, but lots and lots of blokes who are over 60 may not have really ever done much of that stuff. And we got to this idea called the second half of life. It comes from Carl Jung, and I suppose more or less it is. You could divide your life into halves if you are going to live to your 80s, because it probably comes in. It starts getting stronger for a lot of people in their 40s, maybe their 50s. The classic midlife crisis, where buying a new car doesn't really scratch the itch like it used to, and divorcing your wife and getting a younger bird doesn't really work. Nothing really works, and it's this invitation from life to reevaluate what you're doing. And so when we were researching it, Colin, we came up with some themes, didn't we? So I'll just read them out. One was ambition, one was death, then relationships, wealth, health. And here's some questions we cooked up. Will I be remembered? How do I know I'm good if I'm not doing what I'm good at, which might be earning money, or whatever it was that we were doing when we were working? Why do I feel so invisible? How do I deal with the discomfort of not earning? Should I really be on this many prescription medications? I think, was it you that found out some shocking statistics that
Yeah, that's the stuff that I wish I now had in front of me, but I haven't. But
I've got it here. Look,
yeah, one of the
uh, this came from your research.
yeah, okay.
Almost 80% of older adults regularly take at least two prescription drugs, and 36% take at least five, most being dependent for the rest of their lives. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final question just on that list is what's my legacy? And I think we've been impacted by the work of Stephen Jenkinson quite deeply, or well, not quite deeply, deeply in my
Yeah, yeah.
case, and I think yours. So we're not making this stuff up. We're kind of picking up a thread that's been really eloquently laid down by Stephen. And I did talk to him about this stuff
Mm.
back then, using our project as a kind of way in to have a meeting with him. Um, but I guess, yeah, how should we get into it? What's
Well, I
coming up?
think yeah, for me, I'm just remembering, what the kind of the main fact of that for me, because he'd sat at the bedside of I don't know how many hours he'd spent at the bedside of dying people.
Over 1,000
Yeah, that's 1,500. It was
people,
near
1,500,
1,500,
yeah.
wasn't it? And the main thing, the one thing other than people, even more so than people's regrets of what they had or hadn't done, was just the simple statement of "Will I be remembered?"
Mm.
And that was it, wasn't it? That was the overriding thing. And so there, yeah, that's the idea that we said about legacy. That okay, what are people remembered for, and what would you like to be remembered for? People are remember. There are statues erected to people, in memory of, what. But that again, the person that has had probably the biggest influence on my life, I can almost guarantee that nobody that's listening to this would have heard of him, and yet.
Who
Uh,
is that?
so
Your
his name's Akong Tukul Rinpoche. He's
Rinpoche.
he's a doctor, a Tibetan doctor. Um, I've got a lovely picture of him somewhere on the smile. Anyway, he basically came from Tibet as a refugee into India and then to Oxford and worked in a hospital as a porter while the other Lama that he came with studied English at Oxford. And then they were gifted Sammy Ling at the time that was inhabited by some Theravadan monks who couldn't stand the midges and the cold. So they gave it to the
Oh
Tibetans.
yeah, because it's
Yeah.
5 or 6 in the evening. They just get onto you, the midges,
Oh,
don't they?
well, any time of the day.
Anytime. Oh right.
Oh, yeah, no, they're out all the time if there's no
Oh
sun.
God.
Oh, they're, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was some people's practice was just living with midges, could you live with midges without killing them,
God.
People would have feathers to brush them off. Anyway, I digress. And uh, but he came with nothing. He's ended up forming a charity called Rockpa, which is basically it's helping where help is needed is what it means in Tibetan. So he set up soup kitchens originally in Glasgow and London, and then they just spread all over. And then he set
Mm.
up various centres and started going back to Tibet and trying to re-establish the Tibetan medicine and the schooling for kids and various other projects. Hundreds, if not thousands, of projects. And everyone who worked in the charity, bar one, the accountant, did it as voluntary. But no one will have heard. But it's that kind of legacy. He's remembered by everyone that's ever met him. I can guarantee
Mm.
just from that presence. So, yeah, I think that's for me is a big part of this because once people stop work or doing the thing that they used, they lose those. A lot of them lose those friendships that they've had and those relationships. So a very interesting video, and I've got the guy's name because I've got to quote him because he did all the research on it. And his name's Dr. Riley Moynes, I think Canadian guy, and he literally interviewed thousands, he said, of retirees, and he broke it down that there were four distinct phases of retirement.
Mm.
uh, and everyone went through them. Some of them didn't make it to the fourth one and regressed back to the second one, which is
And so they are they always in the same order?
yeah, pretty well.
Yeah.
Like I say, you definitely have the first. This was defining from all those thousands of interviews that this is what happened.
Mm.
But like I say, so the first one was like the honeymoon period, the holiday, sitting on the beach, the classic pina coladas kind of thing that they said lasts for about a year, maybe more, maybe less. And then it was like, okay, is this it? Yeah. Now,
Mm.
and then the realization in the second phase was basically, what they've lost, everything they've lost in terms of identity, sense of worth, self-worth, but all, I suppose, the routine and purpose, really, a purpose in their life. And so, that could last. It lasts a long time for some people. Other times, some people
So
just
that
will
is
snap out.
that grief that they're in
But
then.
yeah, it sounds like a grief cycle. Yeah, that people go. But yeah, and it can quite often go tip into really deep depression. And there
Mm.
are amazing stats out of America, and I think also this country. On the suicide rate in men between 55 and 75. I mean, it increases at 75, but
Oh
from
right.
75 onwards, that's the biggest bracket of men committing suicide from 55 to 75.
Yeah.
So, that, and I think even more shocking stats that people, I forget what the percentage is, but there is a fair percentage of men who retire within 2 years, they're dead.
Yeah, I can't remember that, but I remember something saying within 5 years of retiring, there's a spike in male mortality, and there's
Mm.
also a spike in divorce rates in over
Yeah,
50s.
yeah,
That's the fastest growing cohort in divorces, but over 60s, it's even higher,
yeah.
but it might already be high. So I don't think it's growing at the same
Yeah, he
velocity.
kind of coined it as the three Ds: divorce, depression, and decline, whether that's physical and mental, So yeah,
Fuck.
you have to face all that, It's like he described it as being hit by a bus, that's
Yeah, because you're sold. Well, I maybe we're getting past the idea that you've I think there was, I don't even know if this people really thought this, but I have the impression that people used to think they've really made it because they've clocked out of their last day of work and now they've got their caravan if they live in England or whatever in the olden days and that's it. They can just sit around playing balls. But yeah, it's not as sold.
oh, definitely that would be the tale from all this research. But to move that on into the third phase, which is what happens then, it becomes this breaking out again and a phase of experimenting and trial and error, trying
Mm.
things out, maybe revisiting things that you did in your youth or something that you really wished you'd done, instead of going into that soul crushing job or whatever it was that you were really creative. So going back to that kind of,
Yeah.
and just trying things out and overcoming that fear of failure as well. It didn't have to, not everything had to work out, but just experimenting and stuff. And
What
then
does he call that phase?
uh, trial and error.
Okay.
Trial and error phase. So yeah, that's yeah. You start, maybe there's an element of contributing into society again, and then getting a sense of meaning and purpose back in some way. Now, that's for some, he said, that can be, for others, it's a way back into the second phase again. People sort of go between those.
Mm.
But for those that then the fourth phase is basically what um, is the reinvent. You reinvent yourself basically. And I think that's what's exciting for me potentially, is helping people to reinvent themselves so they don't have to go into that second phase. Um, Catching it early, I suppose. And yeah, Well, he mentioned the word rewiring, so it is almost like this whole sense of rewiring.
Yeah,
I suppose from your world, therapy, counselling side of things, neuro,
neuroscience,
indeed, yeah,
building new neural pathways. You know
yeah,
what's coming up for me as you say that is um like I don't want people to get a sort of cheapened sense of what this work could be like. It's I don't see it as going to get Botox or something or dermal fillers so you feel a bit rejuvenated for a bit. It's not that, is it? It's more profound, holistic, whole. It's a sort of growth into wholeness. And I think we have to talk about eldership because basically we're supposed to become elders, but most people walking around now in England over 60 are children still. They they haven't done, they weren't really eldered, so they don't really know what it looks like. And so we're all walking around in the kind of the ruins of our culture, where we can try and have a stab at doing things that might be an expression of a whole culture, like the retreats we used to. You're still doing it, aren't you? The quest
yeah, yeah,
weekend with the band of brothers.
yeah.
That's a
Quest for
rites of
community.
passage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's called a quest for community because
yeah,
again, that's something that people lose
yeah.
and crave. People crave that kind of connection and community.
That's the thing. When it's provided, even imperfect as it is, because it's a sort of recreation of an imagined thing that we haven't seen. It it lands. It's so profound for people. So I think what do we mean by elder? What's an elder? Would you say, Colin?
Well, so I'm going to put it in the context of a band of brothers, which you brought up is how we met. That the we have elders in the community, but they're elders in training. So because, like you say, that lineage is gone, uh, that we're near now having to train using basically looking back in history and using old stories and basically myths and things around what it really meant to be an elder. But I mean, there are still elders, and I think Akon Rimshay was talking about was definitely one of those people. And building that up is part of the reinventing yourself. Uh, you know, and I think that's we in a band of brothers. The band of brothers is set up as a mentoring organisation to mentor young men who are we at risk of being in the criminal justice system, but basically they're struggling, and we help them to sort of turn their lives around. So by doing that, we're learning at the same time about ourselves in a community of men who are doing something that is very unusual in our society of like being vulnerable, sharing themselves, holding themselves accountable, um, and also standing face to face with another man and telling them they've got a problem with it, but realizing it's their work. It's this mirror, looking in the mirror and taking 100% responsibility. It is a simple way of saying, what eldership is. It's taking 100% responsibility for your life and everything that shows up in it. How many people can do that? you know,
Yeah, and
uh,
taking responsibility for the the culture as we find it as well, and it's not someone else's fault. Or you know, if we're walking around and we're in our 60s or 70s, we must have. And well, I'm in my 40s, but I'm co-producing the culture now. It's not really good enough for me just to moan about it, although I do. But I think we need to start. Well, we don't need to do anything, but I think to become an elder, it's about taking responsibility really across the board, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. and nobody's perfect, and that's why I say elders in training, because
Yeah,
I can hold my hand up to plenty of things.
me too.
Definitely not perfect. Um, yeah, yeah, I did. Well, that's going back some, but that there
Go
was a
on.
character in the Wacky Races called Peter Perfect, and I sort of modelled myself on being perfect. That was the idea. I just wow, that got to go out the window. That's yeah, that's never going to happen. So yeah, it's allowing for that vulnerability and yeah, mistakes, but also when you've made them, holding your hands up. And yeah, it is amazing what happens in those groups with the men when men are willing to share. And I think there's something about that we could explore. And yeah, I think you mentioned Carl Jung at the beginning, but the archetypes that we use I mean, they're general archetypes, but they could specifically they're male archetypes, if you like. And the sovereign, the king or the sovereign is, an elder is the one that holds everything in balance and has the vision, and the one with a compassionate and joyful heart is able to include everyone. It's nothing's excluded in that way.
Mm. I think I think the challenge for a lot of the men that may be our target audience for this conversation, in my mind anyway, a lot of these guys will have been high achievers working really hard for um 40 plus years, and the kids have gone left home, um and they're in one of those four phases so that you described. They're either in the honeymoon, the loss, the trial and error, or the reinvention. But they might, it's quite likely that they haven't really ever done a piece of work that's around, um they'll probably see it as, often they, like people of that generation, see it as navel gazing, like self-indulgent, talking about themselves. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? It's like a bit pathetic. I mean, I'm caricaturing it, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do think that's the boomers tend to just think it's a load of bollocks, talking about deep stuff, and it's just, it's more about just material concerns, like should they downsize with the house, and should they get better health insurance, and blah blah blah. But I guess what we'd like to do is get hold of some of those people if they want, and open up a, a conversation that turns into actually a sustained piece of work that they're able to do for some decades until they die. That means they die well. That means when they die, they feel like they've actually, um uh they feel
well,
really good. They feel really
yeah,
good about dying,
I
almost.
think it's able to let go is,
Yeah.
able to just, yeah, surrender into it, for me is something that I personally would 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 hope is there when the time comes. That,
Yeah.
and like I said, as we pointed out, you never know when that day is coming, do you? It's I think what's the average age of men life for men in the UK is 84. So if you retire, well, the retirement age of 60, 66, 67, going up now, probably going to be 70 in a few years' time. You might have 10, 15 years or something,
Mm.
tops. So, yeah, you're going to start looking at other things in those 20 years. I am absolutely certain of that. Whether you're dealing in the material world or not, you this is going to be happening. That question of what's it all about? What happens when you die? You know,
Mm.
yeah.
And so,
For me, there's a lot of denial as well, and I can
yeah.
cite my dad. as well. I mean, he died in his late 80s, and he had to sort of 2 days before, but he had to ask me whether he was am I dying? You know, he didn't understand what was going on. Am I dying? You know, it's like so sad, man. Yeah, so I mean, I've done my kind of work around that. I still feel it here as I say it, and I've got a picture of him in front of me. Yeah, yeah. So it's there's a lot of sadness for relatives and family, I think, involved for when a man, in particular, I'm going to say, man, hasn't done his work in that way, hasn't looked into what's next. Things. It's all right, like you say, that whole. And that's a big side of it, is sorting out all the financial and property stuff and all that, but it's a very small part of it when it comes to the end.
Mm,
I
yeah.
think in Indian culture, there was those phases of life, and people didn't live as long. But that if we're talking about a fourth phase, the last phase, they'd done the whole family thing, like you say, and got to that point, what we would call retirement. But for them, that was then a spiritual journey. It was pilgrimage. It was going on that inner journey.
Mm.
That journey from the head to the heart.
They would they would just disappear into the woods and rename themselves, and
But they would be in community as well. Now,
yeah.
when I went to Tibet in the mid 90s, 96, what I was really struck by there, like in the capital there, Lhasa, surrounded by Chinese troops. They were all around the place, Chinese music being blasted everywhere at the time. But there were these like little, I suppose they'd be like old day centres for all people. Hundreds of them, they're all in there spinning the mantra wheels and saying prayers constantly. And there was a huge bowls of food and drink going. They were all there together, and it was just so joyful to see as well. But
Mm.
we really don't have that. I spend a lot of time in care homes for people, the elderly, and yeah, man, they're sad places. A lot of them. You know.
You,
So
you you go you teach them to dance and move,
I
don't
would
you?
say I teach them to dance. I go in there. We have I call it, you dance different. And the difference is you don't need to be able to leap up and dance. Some people really like to, or would really, in their mind, would really like to enable people. It's natural movement, and that's but and there's a lot of singing involved with old songs, and yeah, just sort of bringing back the different times of year. Anyway, that is it's a whole other thing in a way, but yeah, I really love that work. It's great. And there's something really beautiful about, and I've got to say, it's 95% of women in the care homes. There's not men at all. They've died. You know, that's the truth of it is, or whatever. They're just managing somehow. Maybe they've still got a wife and they're living at home, but yeah, it's unusual to see men in the care homes.
Mm. Men die younger, don't they?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I just looking at all that is like what can be done to alleviate like those things in that phase two, and so that people have something to kind of retire rather than retire from.
Yeah, what's yeah, it's almost like the mission. What's the mission? When you get married, there's a mission of marriage. And when you get retired, what's the mission? Well, it's because
It's a good question for anyone watching. If they pop it in the comments, yeah.
yeah, please do. But I think one of the dangers is becoming irrelevant. One of the questions I asked at the start was, why do I feel so invisible? I remember my stepdad told me when I was growing up, he said, beyond a certain age, he said people just didn't look at him in the street. It's like he was invisible. And it was hard for him because he used to be a musician, like a professional musician, and he had got so much attention all his life, and then no one no one looked at him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you see that with actors and footballers and all that. Anyone that's been in the public eye, as soon as
Yeah,
they're out of it, there's a lot of turn to a lot of alcoholism, drugs, isn't it? So,
yeah. There's some like an enforced humility about aging, and very easily loneliness. I mean, very high rates of loneliness, very
we
high
have,
rates of friendlessness in
yeah, yeah,
blokes, especially. Blokes are much more vulnerable to isolation, depression, and suicide than
yeah.
women in later life because they're so bad at maintaining friendship networks.
I think we had those stats maybe somewhere on
I think I've got it here actually.
the
Let's see.
friendships. Yeah, I think it was certain men over a certain age, 55, whatever it was, could only really name one true friend.
Mm.
Whereas I think, yeah, it's very different for women.
Here we go. A YouGov poll in 2019 found 1 in 5 men did not have one close friend they could confide in. And Age UK reports a 50% rise in men admitting to loneliness.
Yeah, yeah, big deal. It is a big deal.
Just looking at the other question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think.
Nearly half of early retirees find their finances worsening, and 24% return to work having experienced financial issues. So that's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think I'd like to speak about that, Zach,
mm,
because when I came out of the monastery, I think for me, prior to that, I'd always wanted to be an artist. I've only ever had one job. I worked for 2 years for a company in Manchester doing technical illustration, and then I went self-employed, and then I could kind of do my own thing. But then when I came out of the monastery, I actually trained in the art of sacred clowning and to just thought, what do I really want to do? And I ended up driving a bus around London, taking old folks to the art galleries. That was my kind of first
that
work.
sounds great.
Oh, it was so cool. And I got to see all the exhibitions as well. Yeah, so, and then moved to Cornwall. And I thought, I could get a job, I do a thing, but I had to reinvent myself again. And something I'd picked up in the monastery was screen printing. So I went around the schools doing, at the time, this whole multiculturalism was a big thing. And I went around doing screen printing prayer flags with the kids on the theme of inner peace leads to world peace. That's a quote from the Dalai Lama. It's just that constant thing of like reinventing and doing something that comes from heart that you want to do, so that I never feel like I've got to retire. So that constant creating, and that's creativity is another big factor. And I'm sure there's some stats on it somewhere that creativity that's lost from childhood, from the age of 5, 6, 7. It's kind of and then
Beaten out of us at school.
not
Yeah.
exactly, or ridiculed out of us. That to come back to that in this phase of life is a really, really big, useful thing. And then that you've always got the possibility of recreating yourself, but being creative in whatever way that is. Like you're saying, whether it's musical, or past. And the other thing in this phase 4 that they discovered was the need to be of service and to give back. So it might have been sharing those skills that you picked up at work as a way of finding meaning and purpose again. So yeah, there's definitely two things, big elements for me, and that is the creativity and spirituality, if you like, whatever however you want to call it. I don't want to call it religion, but it's some sense of self awareness, or just self awareness in whatever form that takes for each individual. It doesn't have to be hung on anything in particular, but yeah, where, how do people find some meaning for themselves that's just personal? It doesn't, yeah, have to be attached to anything or anyone else.
Is it true? I think my dad found this that in China they let people go back to uni for free when they're in retirement. So lots of people just end up studying. They do a degree or a course that they just fancy, but they don't need to
Mm.
work or anything. But it sounds like a kind of quite a structured approach to what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, that sounds to me,
That's quite
that
kind of
sounds like a bit of a
institutionalized.
regression
Yeah,
and
yeah.
more mental stuff. I'm
Going
talking
into a whole structure that isn't
about,
yours. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm talking, as nothing wrong with learning, keep on learning for sure. That's definitely something that might stave off dementia, that creating those new pathways that you were talking about.
Mm.
But yeah, that's, yeah, learning in whatever form, whether that is going back to college or whatever. But I think, that's, I want to imagine that there's a great percentage of retirees who want to go back into a college or university. Maybe Chinese people are different.
I just think that the the value, like the the preciousness of a man a man who's got let's say he's got 70 years of life experience and he's probably got 50 40 or 50 years of some kind of professional experience. He's made his way in the world. He's probably become a father and a grandfather. He's been a probably been a husband and a son and all the rest of it. He has so much to offer younger people, yeah, kids and young men, and young women as well. But it's it's so strange, isn't it? How siloed all these people are. They're just rotting. They're watching telly all day, and they just go and get food from the shop. And how what a waste.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I've got oh, the words of an old song from the 70s. Ian Jury and the Blockheads. What a waste. Bum, bum. I could be singing in it. What a waste. Dun, dun. Yeah, waste of life, man. It is. And I could see you going, it's suffering. It's suffering, man. It is a waste of a life. And I just want to reiterate, go back to that thing around the learning thing, because my mum, who's 94 now and still going strong, great grandma, and I think she goes to something called the University of the Third Age. I think it is. I might be getting the title wrong, but that's massive in the UK now.
What's that?
University of the Third Age. So it's like university for older people, but they meet up and they'll have some guest speaker come in. It's that kind of learning, not going to a
Mm,
university, but in the community. I think that's
right.
really good. Yes, that sounds great. She gets a lot out of that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of an organization called Lads Need Dads, which is
Mm.
in, I think it might be in Essex or Sussex, but it's a brilliant organization. But it's only in that area, and it should be everywhere really. And what they do is they just put young lads who are growing up in single mum households, they just give them a male mentor, and that bloke gives the time to the boy, and the results are amazing.
Mm.
Just like we see in a Band of Brothers, the results are impressive, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. And I think I'm holding my hand up there when you said that. That was me. I was brought up from
Oh yeah, me too.
teenage. Yeah, yeah, me too. Kind of. Yeah, brought up as a early, well, not even teens, 11, 12, by my mum and two sisters. Yeah, so
Same.
yeah. I think when I joined the Band of Brothers, and I did the first quest weekend that I staffed, and the young men were on it, and seeing them go after the weekend, and I was so moved by it, just realizing that that's what I needed when I
Yeah.
was a youth, and it wasn't there. It was nothing, and so
No.
yeah, I ended up in court and all sorts of yeah gangs back in the day, football gangs.
Did you
That's
grow up
it.
in Mank? Where did you grow up?
No, just outside, right on the outskirts of Manchester. Yeah, so
Yeah.
one of them. Yeah, yeah. And that's what's going on now. It's just like you say, yeah. So I think that part of we were talking about is a legacy, wasn't it? And like, can older men in retirement become mentors? And we know they can, because that's a lot of the guys in the Band of Brothers are retired. But also, are there young men in your life who you feel need mentoring? And I think you're, without going into any details, but I've had experiences of mentoring young men, um, that that weren't particularly at the risk of being in the criminal justice, just that thing that they were in need of of
They
yeah
needed some wisdom from an older man and a bit of guidance, but they attention and
tension,
confidential support,
yeah
which
yeah
isn't therapy so much as it's just it's hmm, it's different, isn't it? Somehow.
definitely, yeah. I mean, that's the way that the mentoring is described in the thing. It's having someone to walk alongside you,
Hmm.
and to hear what you're saying, to be a bit of a mirror, and that maybe there's some accountability in there. So it's um and not, but with always with that view to looking forward to creating what the young man wants in his life, even if he doesn't know at first. It's maybe finding what it is that he wants to do and walking alongside him to
Hmm.
bring that to fruition, basically.
Hmm.
And it ain't always successful, but there are a lot of success stories. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that for me, I think when we originally thought about that, doing this, that there was an element of that in it for me that I like. As I go into my retirement, I want to be doing more of that.
Yeah, I would as well. And I don't feel like I have capacity to do it at the moment, and I do miss it. And I mean, purely for selfish reasons, I think people should know that it just feels great. I don't think there's a better feeling than being, well, like Rinpoche was doing, like you said, just what did he say? Giving where it's needed,
Helping where help is needed. Yeah,
helping where help is needed. That's why we're here. I think
yeah,
you're when you do that, you're sort of completing a natural cycle that's trying to express itself through us, and the feeling you get tells you that because
yeah,
it feels so right.
yeah. While you mentioned his name again, I have found a picture of him, and because this was something that felt like really important to me, and these were teachings that he'd given, but they're very secular. They're not, I mean, they're related to Buddhism, but they're very secular. But here he is, and he's called "Restoring the Balance,
Ah,
Sharing Tibetan Wisdom."
yeah,
Yeah, just a beauty of a man.
lovely.
Yeah, murdered in China, unfortunately.
God, didn't know that.
Yeah, but yeah, we all. And people had said the last time they'd seen him, it felt like he was saying goodbye to them, and then he went on this trip to Tibet. Well, what was Tibet, that's now claimed by China. But yeah, didn't come back.
Ooh. Mm.
Yeah, we're back to that death theme, aren't we?
Yeah, we don't know how long we've got. We don't
Exactly.
actually have that long anyway, even if we get to the the average age life expectancy. What did
Yeah.
you say? 84.
84, I think, for men. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the UK. I mean, it's obviously different places, but yeah, yeah, definitely. There's something about that sense of urgency that's kicking.
Just to take things a bit darker, I guess. I've been was given a book called Program to Kill for my birthday, and it goes into great detail about child ritual abuse and sexual abuse across the world. And you know, if older men looking for something to do and they have um you know they're reasonably uh good at, I don't know, doing research and communicating and just doing work with information. There's a war on against children. I mean, it's children are really not doing well and on a lot of metrics. But this book really red pilled me in terms of just the scale of um, sexual abuse against children for decades and decades and decades. It's all there, and there may well be state connivance in it, links to the CIA and so on, which may sound like a mad conspiracy theorist, but a theory. But
Well,
it's
you
a,
don't even have to go to America, do you?
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
we're
stuff.
supposed to be having we're supposed to be having a national inquiry into the rape gang scandal in this country that's involved
Yeah,
the
good luck with that. I mean, I remember when I was doing my training in therapy, I did it. A project I had to do was a presentation on our inquiry into child sexual abuse. That was it kept being commissioned at that time. So this was in, when was it? 2017, 2018. It had already been commissioned, and then someone was chosen by the government to run it, and then they every single time they would bail on it after a year or two. And at the time, it still hadn't gone anywhere. And I still don't think it's actually gone anywhere. I might be wrong, but reading this book, it just made so much sense because it's not just America. It's talking about the UK, France, all over the world. There's a big trade going on in protecting people from prosecution. But I'm just mentioning that just because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to protect children. And if you don't need to be paid to work because you're retired, you can be really valuable. You know, you can save people from being victims. And that's a really good way to spend your retirement.
yeah, yeah, being useful. That's what you were saying. Just that sense of accomplishment as well that brings back. That
Mm,
yeah. I think what was the word? Yeah, significance was a big word that struck me, and that
yeah,
people lose that sense of being significant. And you said the disappearing, that kind of way. And so yeah, as a way of being significant, maybe not being seen, but doing significant work is
mm,
is
having an
something.
impact.
Yeah.
And then from that, probably feeling potent and vital and energy.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about health, have we?
No.
And I'm aware that our that we
Yeah, I've got to end this in a couple of minutes.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been really good going over this,
Mm,
sort of whetting my appetite for more conversation, maybe.
yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Oh, the wheel of life. You can't see it very well, but it's it's a wheel of life, and it's very circular
It
or
looks like it's got a
cyclical.
head
It
and
has. Well, it's in the fearful grip of Yama, Lord of Death, and he's what? Yeah, that's kind of yeah. I wanted to, bring it in as a piece of artwork at some point because
that's
that's
lovely.
yeah, it's just a real portrayal. If people are interested at some point in looking into the Tibetan Wheel of Life, it's quite something.
Is that an artifact or did you make it?
I didn't make that one. I
Uh,
used to do the tanker paintings when I was at the monastery, but no, that one's actually a friend gave it me.
okay.
Yeah.
Right, Colin. Well, it's been a real pleasure having you on the
I will.
podcast.
Thank you.
Um, where can people find you if they because you offer you don't offer anything.
Well, at the moment, no, I haven't got an offer, but this is it. I'm just on my for my
We're not very good businessmen, are we?
well, for my 66th birthday, I'm starting a YouTube channel, and I'm putting it all together. I'm taking this next month
Okay,
to put it all together, and I will be
great.
starting a YouTube channel. And but yeah, if you um,
I'll publish this, but then when your thing's up, I'll put the
yeah,
link to it on it.
yeah,
Right.
that'd be cool. Yeah, and I'll have an email in there and address if people want to get
Cool.
in touch with me.
Right on. Okay. Bye,
Hey,
everyone. See you soon.
cheers, Zach. Bye, everyone.